Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. If you are preparing for a clinical SAS programming role or working with CDISC SDTM dataset, understanding the SV domain or the subject visit domain is absolutely critical. In this video, we will cover these core concepts, practical derivation logic, real-world challenges on SAS programming and most commonly used interview questions in this video. So let's dive in. The SV domain is a special purpose SDTM domain that captures the planned and actual visits data for each subject during a clinical trial. It's used to track when visits occurred, didn't occur, or happened unscheduled. The structure of this domain is one record per actual or planned visit per subject. The topic variable is VISITNUM. The required variables are study ID, domain, uSubject ID, VISITNUM. The expected variables are SV presp, SV occur, SV start date, SV end date. The permissible variables are visit, SV reason OC, which is the reason for occur value. Then we have the SVCNT mode, which is the contact mode. And then another is the pandemic related change indicator. We have the visit dy start, SV start dy, SVEN dy, and then we have the SPUPDES, which is the description of unplanned visit. Now let's talk about some of the SV assumptions. Subject can have only one and only one record per visit num. We cannot have the multiple records for the same visit num or the visit information in SV. Subjects who fail screening or has withdrawn or have died or otherwise discontinue study participation will not have any records for planned visit subsequent to their final disposition event. What does we mean by the final disposition event is that as you might have know as you might know that we do have a DS domain which captures the information on what the subject has undergone in the study at any point of time. So for a subject who has discontinued from the study, then we will have a record in DS marking the end of study participation for that subject, and we will have a DS SCDTC populated as well for that particular record. So if a subject had a such record in DS, then we cannot have any planned visit record in SV beyond that DS STDTC record because the subject has, according to these records, the subject has discontinued. So there will not, the subject will not undergo any planned visits. Another point to note here is that this assumptions is in sync with one of the Pinnacle rule, which you might have seen while running any Pinnacle checks, is that sometimes we get a error or a warning message in Pinnacle that a particular domain record is having the its date which is after the date of DSSTDTC. So it also is covering that logic here that if the subject has ended the study, then in SV you cannot have any visit beyond that end of study participation date. The next one is that for planned and unplanned visits with the subject, whether or not they are physical visits to our investigational site, these are represented in this domain. How we represent our that is the next point which we will be discussing, that is that of we have a variable sp presp. When this variable is equals to y, that means that that particular record or that particular visit is a planned visit. And for planned visit only, you will have the SV occur populated, whether it will be populated as y or n. So for the planned visit, when the SV presp is y, if the SV occur is y, that indicates that that planned visit has occurred. But if the SV occur is equals to n, then that means that the visit was planned, but this visit, the planned visit, did not occur for the subject. For unplanned visit, the SV presp and SV occur will be null. The next assumption is that the planned study day of visit variable, which is the visit dy, that should be not be populated for unplanned visit. Next is that SVN equals to acquire our records are only to be created for planned visits that are expected to occur before the end of the subject's participation. So as we have discussed that these records are the records which will be created only for planned visits and are expected because these are planned visits and these are expected to occur, but we will populate only these records when the sub till the time the subject is active in the study. If the subject has ended the study participation, then after that all the planned visits will not have any record for that subject in our SV domain. Records for unplanned visits should be included in the SV dataset. For unplanned visits, the SPUPDS can be populated with a description of the reasons of the unplanned visit. Some judgment may be required to determine what constitutes an unplanned visit. When data are collected outside a planned visit, that act of collecting data may or may not be described as a visit. The encounter should generally be treated as a visit if data from the encounter are included in any domain for which VISITNUM is included. A record with a missing value of VISITNUM is generally less useful than a record with VISITNUM populated. The variable SVCNT mode, which is the contact mode variable, is used to record the way in which the visit was conducted. For example, for a visit to a clinic, this variable, this SVCNT mode, will be having the value of in person. Visit conducted remotely might have values such as telephone, remote audio video, or IVRS. Now let's take a look at a sample raw datasets that feed into SV. It includes columns like folder and folder num for visit num and number, visit dt for visit date, module for domain such as AE, LB, and so on, the visit occurred and visit reason for the visit status. Right now, I'm showing you one example of a sample dataset, the raw dataset, which we can also call as the visit dataset, which we will use in our code for generating the SV dataset. Please note that if in your study you do not have such a dataset, then you might need to create this intermediate dataset by considering all the other modules or the other domain data where you are capturing the date, because date and visit. So you from all these you will have to know that which date record you have and that record happens for which visit. Another point to note before we go into the details of how to create the SV dataset is that normally there are two ways of creating the SV dataset. The first one is that you use the SDTM domain to create the SV dataset. That if you are following this convention, that what you will have to do is that the SV will be created at the last of the at the last, and that means that once you have generated all the SDTM domain, and you will generate the SV using the generated SDTM dataset, and then you will again rerun the generated dataset to incorporate the visit and VISITNUM and other details which we have created in SV. So this is not something which the companies nowadays are following, because it is we are again reiterating back to generate the generated domains in SDTM. So the other way is that you consider the raw dataset, which are the collected datasets, to generate the SV first after the DM, and then using the DM and SV you generate the rest of the SDTM domains. If you follow this convention, then what is the benefit of this convention is that since you have already generated the SV domain from the raw dataset, you can use the SV domain for the VISITNUM and for any other information which we are having in SV to be used in our other SDTM dataset, and you do not need to rerun again and again after generating the SV. That is one point, and the other point is that it reduces or even eliminates the dependency of SV domain on other datasets. So it depends on your study and your sponsors method that in which way you want to create the SV datasets. So let's talk about this sample dataset first now. In this sample dataset, you can notice that this is a dataset which is having the information of the visits and their date, and for you can also see in the module from the module column that uh, in this particular visit what we were assessing or we were capturing. So if you notice the first record, the module value is the informed consent form. So what was happening was that for this subject in this visit, the informed consent was being signed or was being uh, taken from the subject. So that is another one information which we are having in this data set. Another information which you need to focus in this data set is the variable folder and folder num. So in this two columns, what we are having the information is, to some extent you can say, the visit and visit num information. So in your study there will be a CRF form where you are capturing the visits which are happening in your study, and either there will be a question to enter the information of the visit and visit num, and which will be coming in the folder or folder num type of columns, or you might have a different CRF form for each different visit. So that information is coming in the folder and folder num column here. The visit DTC, the visit DT column is having the information of the date of visit. The visit occurred is having the information of that whether this visit occurred or not. Again, this is coming from a CRF design where if there will be a question that visit did this visit occur or not, yes or no. So if it occurred, then you will have a response of yes. If no, if did not occur, then you have no. And if you do not, if the response is no, then there will be another question in your CRF form that what was the reason this visit was not performed. So that reason you are seeing that was captured in the visit underscore reason variable here. This is uh, a snapshot of a small format of the dataset. Please note that there will be some other variables as well in this visit raw sample visit dataset, which will have the information of the CRF form from which these particular records are taken. There will be another columns where you might also have the record position. When I say record position, that will also help to identify that which record was uh, entered first in the database. So please note that these are important points which we will be discussing in further details, and their importance in the uh, later in this video in some time. So in this video, in this data set, you can also see we are having unscheduled visits also happening, and for the unscheduled visits, the folder value which is having the visit information have a suffix of UNS in this particular example. But again, depending on the study, you might have a suffix, the unscheduled visits have a be populated as a suffix UNS or prefix UNS, or some sort of uh, value will be used to identify that these visits are unscheduled visits in your study. And you can see here that in this raw sample dataset, they are also giving the visit term as 3.1 or 4.1 for the unscheduled visits. But again, this is again dependent on the study. You might have some other values such as 999 or some other values which you might need to uh, properly get the correct visit num while you are generating the SDTM SV data set for unscheduled records. Another point to note here is that we are having the information of modules such as with vital signs, adverse event, and so on. What's the importance of having this? If you note here, the unscheduled visit, which is the unscheduled visit week 1 UNS, that happened for adverse event, and the week 2 UNS unscheduled visit, which is the last record of this data set, is that happened for a laboratory test. So from this, we know that these unscheduled visits was capturing what type of data, right? So when you have to populate the SV UPDES, you will have to give a reason or a description of these unplanned visits. So there, this information will be used, that what we were collecting and what was happening in these unscheduled visits. So this information is also important and should not be ignored if this information is collected while generating the SV domain dataset. So having gone through the sample visit dataset here, let's go to the SAS code which we can use for generating the SV dataset. Now, generating the SV dataset right here involves few steps which we might need to consider. I would like to reiterate that right now the raw underscore visits dataset which I'm using in my SAS code is the dataset which is having all the information of all the dates and visits which has happened across all the modules, or which has been collected for this study. If you have this type of raw data set in your study, you can use that. But if you do not have that data set, you will need to club all the data informations coming from the different domains in your study and create intermediate data sets similar to raw underscore visits here. And after that, you can go through the remaining steps to generate the SV dataset. So the first step right now, what we are doing is we are separating the planned and unscheduled visits from this particular raw data set, which is the raw visits. Why we are doing it? Because for the planned visits, we will have to fetch the minimum and the maximum date of observation to generate the start date and end date from the planned visits, because only planned visits right now for planned visits. And for the unscheduled visits, we will incorporate the unscheduled visits after we have uh, got the start date and end date of the planned visits here, because if these are unplanned visit, they will have a different conventions of the visit and VISITNUM population, and also we will have to align where these visits fall between the planned visits. The dates which we have for the unscheduled visits cannot be used to identify the start and end date for the planned visits in this scenario. So after we have separated the unplanned visits or the unscheduled visit, another thing which we are seeing is that we are from the planned visits data also, we are again separating the ones where the visit occurred. Why? Because obviously for the records for the visits which we did not occur, we will not have the start or end date. So because of that, to avoid any issue while sorting the data set based on these dates and getting a minimum and maximum date, to avoid any null values impacting the calculation of minimum and maximum dates here, we are separating the uh, planned visits which did not happen and which did happen. So the next will be to use the uh, data set which we have created from the planned occurred visits, and we calculated the start date and end date for the SV and have generated that data set which is by the name of SV dates. So using this SV dates dataset along with that TV dataset, again the TV is another SDTM trial domain, so we will have to use the TV domain to get the correct value of your VISITNUM visit dy that is being assigned in your study. So because of that, we are using the TV data set here along with our intermediate data set, which is the SV date. And when we are merging these two data sets, we are creating the remaining other SV domain as well, which is such as the domain, subject ID, SV press, SV occur, and the SV recent visit did not occur. So here you can see that since these are planned visit, the SV press will be marked as Y. And another point is that all these planned visit occurred. So that's why the SV occur is also mapped to Y. And the SV reason for for non-occurrence of planned visit will be kept as null. The visit num is the visit num which we are capturing from the folder num column of the raw data set here. So that is one point. And then we are using the unscheduled visits, and in unscheduled visits also we are sorting based on the folder num, which is again the visit num in variables, and using the retain function we are calculating the number of unscheduled visits within a particular visit through this programming. And you can see we are incrementing it by +1, or we are also adding the zero, like one decimal values, and incrementing the decimal value for that unscheduled visit. So if you have two or more than one unplanned visits for a particular planned visit, say after visit 3 you have two unplanned visits, then using this code the two unplanned visits will have the visit num as 3.1 and 3.2, and so on. So that type of logic is implemented in this data step here. And again, you can notice another point, that is that the visit dy is kept as null. Why that is? Because for the unplanned visit, the visit dy will always be kept as null. And again, the SV press will also be kept as null because it's an unplanned visit. The SV occur will be null, and the SV reason occur will also be null here. So using this, we have generated the SV unscheduled one also, and the last step which we are left with the are the visits which were planned but which did not occur. So we are creating another data set, and we are populating all the um, SV domain related variables for the planned not occurred visits here. Since these were planned, the SV press will be Y, but since these planned visit did not occur, we will have the SV occur as N, and the reason why these visit did not occur will go in the SV REASOC variable here. And we do not have the start date and end date for these variables because this visit did not happen, so they are also kept as null. So in this way, you have now what you have is you have a planned visits which occurred record, the unscheduled visits record, and planned but did not occur records here. And then we will set all these, we will sort with the correct order of the visit num and start date, and you can generate the sequence variable after that, and you can have the final SV dataset, the the final SV dataset in this way. Again, this is a sample code which will may not work for your own study, so it will give you just an idea on how you can program in your study and how to proceed with it, but you will have to see your study requirements before you start programming your SV in any case. Please note another point which is important here is that in all this coding, what we have assumed is that the dates which are captured at the raw dataset level are a complete dates. But what will happen if you have captured an partial date for any visit? Please note that SDTM does not allow the imputation of dates. So you cannot imputate any partial date in SDTM. So if you are capturing any partial date, the same as it is partial date will go in your date variables. So another question which might ask, and which is also an very important interview question, is that how you will uh, generate the unscheduled VISITNUM for the records where the unscheduled visits are having a partial visit. What I'm saying is that a record which is happening for an unscheduled visit have the date of observation as a partial date. We do not have the complete information of day, month, and year, but either day or either we have the information of month and year, or even only the year. We do not have the complete information. So how you will identify that this unscheduled visit falls under between which two planned visits? And this situation will be more critical when you have more than one unscheduled visits happening between two planned visits, and the date of observation is a partial date for such an unplanned visit. So how you will identify? So in this scenario, what you can do is, let's segregate it in the scenario. If you have only one unplanned visit between two planned visits, then using the year or the month information which is captured, you can identify you can identify the planned visits under which between which this unplanned visit is happening. So you can still program the unplanned visit for this type of scenarios. But when you have more than one unplanned visit happening between two planned visits, and the date of observation for these unplanned visits are partial, in that scenario, uh, we will prefer, uh, like the sponsors normally have a uh, you can say a rule, or they have some sort of identification to how to identify the clinical importance of which record should be considered first. So if you have such thing in your study, you can follow that, or otherwise, as I was mentioning, that sometimes in your when you have this raw data set, which is the visit data set, you have the record position variables as well, or the CRF page information as well captured in your raw data set. So from there you can know that, if you have the record position, you will know that which record was collected first. So you can use that information to identify that, to break this tie, I will say that which record of unplanned visit should be considered first before the other. Another thing which you might consider is the clinical importance of the inform of the unplanned visit. Like we have seen in the raw data set, which in the sample data set, that the unscheduled visits were for AE and LB. So the clinical importance for AE may be more than for LB. So in this scenario, if that is the case, then the unscheduled visits happening for AE will be considered first in the order, and the record which is happening for LB will be considered later. So these are the few parameters you can consider in such type of as a tiebreaker for such type of scenarios. But this is not a hard and fast rule. It all depends on your study requirement and what the sponsor says in this type of situations. That's all for watch today. Thanks for watching. Let me know in comments if you want to cover any specific topic.